Hello, I'm Jackie Morrissey with the Office of Curriculum and Instruction. I'm super excited to be here with you to talk with you about the right connections, an integrated approach to teaching 3-8 writing with the EL education curriculum. We are going to be discussing three goals in three different parts of this writing series. Our goal number one for part one is to discuss the key components of skilled writing. What does it take to make sure that all of our students are prepared to engage in high quality writing where they can express themselves appropriately? Part two is about identifying the writing structures that are embedded in the EL education curriculum. And part three is all about planning and preparing to deliver high quality and effective writing instruction to all of our students here in the School District of Philadelphia. You know, ethnographer and well-known speaker Simon Sinek always says that we need to begin with our why. Here's mine. Along with reading comprehension, writing skill is a predictor of academic success and the basic requirement for participation in the civic life and the global economy. It all boils down to the fact that all of our students need to become proficient and flexible readers. And here in the School District of Philadelphia, that's even a part of our vision. We want to make sure that all of our students graduate and leave our schools ready to realize and imagine any future that they desire. And you know, a big part of that begins with reading as well as writing. Part one, key components of being a skilled writer. Many of you are probably familiar with the reading rope that was released by Dr. Hollis Scarborough in the 1990s. Well, did you know that in 2019, Joan Sedita, literacy guru who has studied language and literacy for the past 40 years of her career, released the writing rope, the graphic that you see on the screen in front of you. As you can see, in order for readers and writers to become skilled writers, Jones says that there are 5 key components that need to be in place in order to make that so. And it is the interweaving of these different strands that really make it possible for students to really become high quality skilled writers. Critical thinking, syntax, text structure, writing craft, and transcription. Let's talk about each one of those. When we start to think about critical thinking, many of us think of critical thinking as one of those buzzwords for the 21st century, and that it truly is. But did you know that critical thinking skills are necessary in order for our students to be deemed as skilled writers? Students need to be able to generate ideas. They need to be able to brainstorm. They need to have creative thinking and gathering information so that they can engage with the writing process. Critical thinking is one of those components that is necessary all the way throughout the student's writing, because in the beginning where they're generating ideas, they have to be able to fully conceptualize their thinking and showcase mastery and knowledge over that throughout the beginning, the middle, and the end of the writing process. The syntax component is really where the grammar is housed. This is where our students are looking at things like sentence structure, elaboration. They're looking at word usage, verbiage, vocabulary, punctuation, all of those different nouns and verbs and adjectives and all of those different things that are really necessary for students to have a really strong grasp on the English language. A really great place for our students to have more practice with syntax is with those language dives that we discussed in a prior session, as well as the module lessons. The text structure is where I think most of us as writing instructors spend most of our time with our students, because this is where we prepare our students for those high stakes end of grade assessments. So our students are trained in writing informational pieces, opinion pieces, argumentative pieces, different types of pieces for different audiences. This is where we see things like paragraph structure and patterns of organization. So students are working on things like sequencing, cause and effects, comparing and contrasting essays, problem solution. Again, they're tying in a lot of critical thinking skills, but working on the text structure really does prepare them for mastery on those things like those PSSAs and those end of year assessments. The writing craft is where I like to say that our writers really do put their thumbprint and their signature craft on the writing. This is where being able to have a very high level of control over TAP, the task, the audience, and the purpose really comes into play. This is where you see students being more refined in their writing, and they're working through a lot of revisions to produce beautiful, accurate, high quality writing. And then last but certainly not least is the transcription piece. A lot of times we think about transcription for grades K2 because this is where we are formally teaching our students how to spell and how to write, and also how to do keyboarding activities. When students are working on learning the phonics in grades K2, research indicates that it's really good for students to not only learn those sounds of words, but also to understand the orthography that goes along with it so that they can really know those representation and the symbols of the letters as well as the sounds that those letters are making. So when you look at those first four that we have discussed, the critical thinking, the syntax, text structure, and the writing craft, we are going to see that those different components are going to be formally taught and explicitly assessed during those module lessons. But again, that transcription piece is something that we really want to make sure that students have really a strong handle on by the time that they leave second grade, because after second grade, students are no longer learning and focusing on how to write, but they're focusing on what they are writing so that they can communicate their learning through their writing. By now, some of you might be asking, okay, how does the EL education curriculum address the key components of writing? Well, I'm so glad that you asked that question, and there are a few places that we can look to find those answers. We can go to the curriculum guide, we can go to the curriculum map, and there we are able to see where those different pieces are laid out, where you can see all of the different spaces where writing is showing up in the curriculum. In addition to that, a really great, quick, and easy place for us to look is to look at those pacing guides. So when you go to any of the grade level pacing guides that you're working with, you're going to see a lot of overlap in definitely the layout, the way that things are showing up. So there is a very predictable nature to the flow of the writing that students engage with the EL education curriculum. In Unit 1, students are introduced to the topic. They might start doing some low stakes writing. They might start unpacking unfamiliar vocabulary terms. They might start even engaging in language dives where they're starting to look at the syntax of the sentences. In Unit 2, there is a little bit more focus on the writing as well as informational pieces. And then in Unit 3, there is a very heavy focus on the writing because in Unit 3, students are producing their performance task. So let's take a look at a few examples. Here's an example from third grade Module 2. Students are looking at researching to build knowledge and teach others. They are doing this through the lens of the wide world of frogs. So look at what happens in Unit 1. In Unit 1, our students are working with the structure of poetry. They're also analyzing poems, and they are also unpacking unfamiliar vocabulary as well. In Unit 2, on one of those end of unit assessments, students are reading somebody else's another excerpt, and they're also writing an on-demand informative paragraph where they're able to explain their answer and their thinking to provide additional information to the reader. And then in Unit 3, there is an end of unit assessment where students are having to write essays, an on-demand essay, and they're also required to compile their writing that they've been working on throughout the previous 2 units so that they can put together a cohesive piece of writing in the form of a book about freaky frogs. And grade 5, module 1, stories of human rights, we're going to see a similar story here. So in unit 1, our students are working on, again, looking at unfamiliar terms. They're looking at unfamiliar vocabulary. They're determining things like those short story literary elements, the main idea, but they're coming up with supporting ideas to include in their writing. In unit 2, in their end of unit assessments, students are revising a draft. So again, there's a heavy focus on the writing, but not only on the writing process, but also the revision process where we see that text structure coming into play, as well as the writer's craft that we were talking about before. And then in Unit 3, our students are working on developing, dare I say, a monologue. They have become so sophisticated in their writing that now they understand, they fully conceptualize the characters thinking that they're talking about, and they're able to express that through their writing, through the thinking, through creative, critical thinking of how a character would respond in a given situation. By the time our students reach middle school, they are engaging in more sophisticated analysis in their writing. So here we are looking at grade 7, module 4, plastic pollution. Students begin in unit 1 looking at and building arguments for evaluation of claims that they're working on. In unit 2, we see that during the second half of the unit, students are writing a paired essay as well as an independent essay. And then by the time our students get to unit 3, wow, they are working on writing and creating documentary scripts. So again, we see how the level of growth and sophistication is being transformed and translated throughout the studies that the students are going through. But we're also seeing a consistent utilization and interweaving of those 5 different key components that we have been talking about: critical thinking, syntax, text structure, writer's craft, and also transcription. We're still working on our spelling, even though there are not those formal lessons, but we're still working on revising and improving upon all of those different key components in our writing. So in this segment, again, we talked about the key components of being a skilled writer, those 5 key components that I just named, and that we just went into detail with, knowing that our students in some way, shape, form, or fashion are going to be engaging with those 5 key components throughout every single layer of their writing. Next time we get together, we're going to talk about the writing structures across the EL education curriculum. And then finally, we're going to close out the right connections with preparing to teach, looking at what we can do to hone our craft in becoming those instructional leaders in our classrooms to support our students with writing. Well, C.S. Lewis once said, "You can make anything by writing." And I, for one, believe that that is true. I believe that we can create some beautiful pieces of work, and so can our students. But I also believe that our students will be more able and more capable to meet the demands of the global society in which we are going to be releasing them to, because they're going to have a much stronger handle on their writing. Thank you so much for being a part of this series. If you have any additional questions or comments or concerns, please feel free to email our office at ela@philasd.org.